The news of humanity's attack spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On a dozen worlds, emergency councils convened as leaders struggled to understand how a primitive species had destroyed a Concord warship. The impossible had happened, and no one knew what it meant. Dr. Kim Nari sat in the communication center of the Defiance, monitoring alien transmissions from across known space. Her translation programs worked frantically to decode the flood of messages passing between Concord worlds. "Captain," she called to Do-hyun, "you need to hear this. The Vorthak survivors are reporting to the Concord High Council. They're calling our railgun an impossible weapon and demanding immediate military action." Captain Do-hyun joined her at the communication station. "What kind of military action?" Dr. Kim's face was grim as she translated more messages. "They're assembling what they call a final pacification fleet, 200 ships from 12 different species. They plan to demonstrate such overwhelming force that humanity will surrender without further resistance." "How long before this fleet arrives?" asked Do-hyun. 3 weeks, maybe 4. "But Captain, there's something else. The client species at the bottom of the Concord hierarchy are sending their own messages. Some of them are asking questions about kinetic weapons." Captain Do-hyun understood the implications immediately. The galaxy's oppressed civilizations were learning that the Concord could be challenged. If word spread too far, the entire galactic order could collapse. Back on Earth, Admiral Park coordinated humanity's preparation for the coming war. Construction facilities in orbit worked around the clock, building more railgun-equipped ships. But even working at maximum speed, they could only complete a handful of vessels before the alien fleet arrived. Engineer Yoon had returned to Earth to oversee the construction project. His original railgun design was being refined and improved, creating weapons that could fire faster and hit harder. But the basic problem remained. Each railgun required enormous amounts of power and materials. "Admiral," he reported during the daily briefing, "we'll have 12 railgun ships ready in 3 weeks. That's not nearly enough to fight 200 alien vessels." Admiral Park studied the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses. "Then we'll have to use different tactics." "Dr. Kim, what have you learned about their military doctrine?" Dr. Kim had spent every waking hour analyzing Concord warfare patterns. They rely entirely on energy weapons and shields. Their tactics are designed for ship-to-ship combat using plasma cannons and particle beams. They've never faced kinetic weapons before. "What does that mean for us?" asked Admiral Park. "It means they'll expect us to fight like they do, line up our ships and exchange fire until one side is destroyed. But kinetic weapons work differently. We can attack from unexpected angles, use asteroids as cover, employ hit-and-run tactics." Admiral Park nodded slowly. "We can't match their numbers, but we might be able to outthink them." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Concord's client species were having their own discussions. On the world of Terrace Prime, a council of the oppressed Tarusian people met in secret to discuss the human attack. "They used kinetic weapons," whispered Elder Korvash. "Simple physics instead of energy manipulation. Why didn't we think of that?" Another elder spoke up. "Because the Concord taught us that energy weapons were the only effective military technology. They convinced us that kinetic weapons were primitive and useless. But if the humans can build such weapons, so can we," said Korvash. "We have asteroid mines and industrial facilities. We could construct railguns of our own." Similar conversations were happening on worlds throughout Concord space. Species that had been suppressed for centuries were suddenly wondering if they really needed to accept alien domination. The Concord leadership was well aware of this danger. On the central world of Nexus, the High Council met in emergency session. Representatives of 12 advanced species debated how to respond to the human threat. "The humans must be destroyed completely," declared Supreme Counselor Thex of the Vorthak. "If we allow them to survive, their example will inspire rebellion throughout our territories." "But their weapon technology is unknown to us," replied Counselor Yira of the Zentari. "We should study their railguns before we attack. Perhaps we can adapt our own defenses." "There is no time for study," snapped Thex. "Every day we delay, more client species learn about kinetic weapons. The rebellion must be crushed immediately." The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Concord had maintained power for 3 millennia through the threat of overwhelming force. They could not allow a primitive species to challenge that authority. Back in the solar system, Captain Do-hyun supervised the installation of additional railguns on asteroid-based platforms. The plan was ambitious. Turn the entire asteroid belt into a defensive network that could attack from multiple directions simultaneously. How many platforms will be ready? He asked Engineer Yoon during a construction inspection. 50, maybe 60, replied Yoon, each one armed with a smaller railgun that can fire every 15 minutes instead of every 30. They won't hit as hard as ship-mounted weapons, but they'll provide covering fire. Dr. Kim had been working on targeting solutions for the coming battle. Captain, I've been thinking about their fleet formation. Based on conquered military doctrine, they'll approach in a standard assault configuration. Heavy ships in the center, lighter vessels on the flanks. What do you recommend? Asked Do-hyun. We hit them from multiple directions at once. Use the asteroid platforms to create crossfire while our ships attack from above and below their formation. Force them to split their attention between dozens of targets. As the weeks passed, humanity prepared for the largest space battle in their history. Every ship in Earth's fleet was modified with railgun technology. Asteroid mining equipment was converted into kinetic weapons. Even civilian vessels were armed with small railguns for desperate last stands. The message from the approaching conquered fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Supreme Admiral Corvin of the Zentari spoke with absolute confidence as his image filled the screens throughout the solar system. Humans of Earth, you have committed an act of unprovoked aggression against the galactic concord. Your species will be pacified and your homeworld occupied. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Admiral Park responded personally from Earth Defense Command. Supreme Admiral, humanity rejects your demand. We will defend our freedom with every weapon at our disposal. Corvin's expression didn't change. So be it. Your primitive kinetic weapons cannot stand against the combined might of 12 civilizations. In 72 hours, your resistance will end. The transmission cut off, leaving the solar system to prepare for war. Across human space, final preparations began. Railgun capacitors charged to full power. Targeting computers locked onto the approaching alien vessels. Asteroid platforms rotated into firing position. Captain Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now flagship of humanity's desperate fleet. Around him, his crew worked quietly and efficiently, their faces showing determination mixed with fear. They all knew the odds against them. Captain, reported Dr. Kim, the alien fleet is dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They're taking position at the edge of the system. Numbers? Asked Do-hyun. 217 ships. Everything from heavy dreadnoughts to fast attack cruisers. It's the largest military force the Concorde has assembled in centuries. Captain Do-hyun looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere beyond his vision, an armada of alien warships was preparing to destroy his species. But humanity had something the Concorde didn't expect: the willingness to fight differently. The battle for Earth's freedom was about to begin. The Vorthak diplomatic fleet arrived exactly on schedule, their ships emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation at the edge of the solar system. Captain Do-hyun watched them through the Defiance's sensors, his heart pounding as he counted their vessels. 12 heavy cruisers surrounded a massive command dreadnought. Each ship was beautiful in its alien design, sleek curves and glowing energy fields that spoke of technology far beyond human understanding. Their shields shimmered like soap bubbles, bending light around the hulls in rainbow patterns. They're positioning themselves in ceremonial formation, reported Dr. Kim from her sensor station. Distance 52,000 kilometers from the designated meeting point. Captain Do-hyun nodded. Everything was going according to plan so far. The aliens expected humanity to approach with a single ship for the surrender ceremony. They had no idea that ship would be armed with the most powerful kinetic weapon ever built. Engineering status report, he called. Engineer Yoon checked his controls one more time. Railgun is fully charged and ready to fire, Captain. All systems are green. The tungsten projectile is loaded and the magnetic field is stable. The Defiance began its approach toward the alien fleet, broadcasting surrender documents and peaceful intentions. To the Vorthak sensors, it appeared to be an unarmed diplomatic vessel coming to accept their terms. Commander Vex's face appeared on the communication screen. The alien looked pleased with himself, clearly enjoying this moment of human submission. Captain Do-hyun, you have made the wise choice. Your species will benefit greatly from Concorde protection. We understand the honor you offer us, replied Do-hyun, trying to keep his voice steady. We are grateful for your guidance. Approach to the designated coordinates, ordered Vex. We will begin the technology transfer process immediately. Your primitive weapons will be removed and your fusion reactors will be limited to civilian use only. As the Defiance moved closer, Dr. Kim quietly tracked the alien ship's positions. The command dreadnought sat in the center of the formation, exactly where her calculations predicted it would be. The vessel was 3 kilometers long and bristled with energy weapons that could destroy entire cities. 48,000 kilometers, she whispered to Captain Do-hyun, almost in range. Captain Do-hyun maintained his conversation with Commander Vex, discussing the details of humanity's surrender while secretly preparing for attack. We have prepared technical specifications of all our military systems as you requested. Excellent, replied Vex. The Concord will be pleased with your cooperation. Few species submit so readily to our wisdom. 50,000 kilometers, reported Dr. Kim quietly. Optimal firing range achieved. This was the moment. Captain Do-hyun took a deep breath and made the decision that would change everything. Commander Vex, there's something else we need to discuss. What is that? Captain Do-hyun looked directly into the alien's black eyes. We're not surrendering. Before Vex could respond, Do-hyun gave the order that would echo across the galaxy. Fire. The Defiance rotated suddenly, revealing the hidden railgun that had been disguised as a sensor array. In 0.003 of a second, 500 kilograms of tungsten carbide accelerated down 2 kilometers of magnetic rails, emerging at 47,000 kilometers per second. The Vorthak shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did not even register the solid projectile. Their sophisticated sensors, calibrated to detect plasma and particle beams, could not track a simple piece of metal moving at 15% of light speed. The tungsten rod struck the command dreadnought dead center. What happened next defied description. The kinetic energy was so enormous that it converted matter directly into energy on impact. The 3-kilometer alien ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, transformed instantly into an expanding sphere of superheated plasma. The shockwave from the impact damaged 2 nearby cruisers, their shields overloading from the unexpected energy release. Debris and radiation scattered in all directions as the Vorthak fleet reeled in shock and confusion. For several seconds, complete silence filled the communication channels. The remaining alien ships hung motionless in space, their crews struggling to process what they had just witnessed. Their flagship and commander had been destroyed by a weapon they didn't understand using physics they had dismissed as primitive. Finally, frantic voices began filling the alien communication networks. Captain Do-hyun could hear their panic even though he couldn't understand their language. Dr. Kim quickly translated the intercepted messages. They're calling for immediate retreat, she reported. The surviving captains are reporting an unknown weapon type and requesting emergency backup from the Concord. Captain Do-hyun watched as the alien formation began to break apart. Ships that had arrived in perfect order now scattered in panic, their crews afraid to remain in range of humanity's mysterious weapon. Captain, called Engineer Yoon, the railgun is recharging. We can fire again in 28 minutes, but the aliens weren't waiting around. One by one, the surviving Vorthak ships activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared from the solar system. In less than 10 minutes, the entire diplomatic fleet had fled, leaving only an expanding cloud of plasma where their flagship had been. Dr. Kim monitored the galactic communication networks as news of the incident spread. Captain, emergency signals are being transmitted across the entire galaxy. Every major power in the Concord is being notified of what happened here. Captain Do-hyun sat in his command chair, suddenly feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species protected by the galactic Concord had been attacked. More than that, they had been destroyed by a weapon the Concord didn't understand. What do you think will happen now? Asked Engineer Yoon. Dr. Kim was already analyzing the intercepted communications. They're terrified. The Concord has built their entire power structure on technological superiority. We just proved that their technology isn't invincible. Captain Do-hyun opened a communication channel to Earth. Admiral Park, mission accomplished. The alien flagship has been destroyed and their fleet has retreated. Admiral Park's voice came through clearly, filled with amazement and concern. Captain, we're receiving reports from observatories across Earth. They detected the energy release from your weapon. How powerful was that shot? Powerful enough, replied Do-hyun. Admiral, we need to prepare for retaliation. The Concord won't let this go unanswered. Understood, Captain. Construction teams are already working on more railgun ships. If they want a war, we'll give them one. As the Defiance began its journey back to Earth, Captain Do-Yun reflected on what they had started. The shot that destroyed the Vorthak flagship had done more than eliminate a single enemy ship. It had shattered the galaxy's understanding of warfare and technology. Word would spread quickly through the Concord's client species. The humans had found a way to fight back. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy's oppressed civilizations had hope. But hope came with a price. The Concord would respond with overwhelming force, determined to destroy humanity before their example could inspire others to rebel. The real war was just beginning. The construction of humanity's secret weapon took place in the asteroid belt, far from Earth where alien sensors might detect it. The UES Defiance had been completely rebuilt around a single purpose, housing the most powerful railgun ever conceived. Captain Do-Yun now commanded the Defiance, having been transferred from the stranded Horizon. He watched through the ship's windows as teams of engineers made final adjustments to the massive weapon system. The railgun stretched through the entire length of the ship, 2 kilometers of magnetic acceleration rails that would hopefully give humanity a fighting chance. Status report. Engineer Yoon, he called out. Yoon Minho looked up from his control panel, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. The magnetic field generators are online, Captain. We're ready for the first live test. Dr. Kim Nari stood beside him, checking her calculations one more time. The projectile should reach 15% of light speed if our math is correct. That's about 47,000 kilometers per second. Captain Do-Yun nodded. They had tested the railgun with smaller projectiles, but this would be the first full power shot with a real tungsten warhead. The target was a large asteroid about 50 kilometers away, far enough to be safe but close enough to observe the results. All stations, prepare for test firing, announced Do-Hyun. Power to maximum. The ship's fusion reactors roared to life, channeling enormous amounts of energy into the railgun's capacitors. Warning lights flashed throughout the ship as power systems strained under the load. This single shot would use more energy than most cities consumed in a day. Capacitors at full charge, brr, reported Yoon. Magnetic field stable. Target locked. Fire, ordered Do-Hyun. The tungsten projectile, a solid metal rod weighing 500 kilograms, accelerated down the railgun's barrel in 0.003 of a second. The ship shook violently as the magnetic forces pushed against its structure. Emergency systems activated as the recoil threatened to tear the Defiance apart. 50 kilometers away, the target asteroid simply vanished. One moment it was a solid rock floating in space. The next it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. The kinetic energy of the projectile had been so enormous that it converted the entire asteroid into gas. My God, whispered Dr. Kim, staring at the sensor readings. It worked. It actually worked. Captain Do-Hyun felt a mixture of excitement and fear. They had created a weapon more powerful than anything in human history. But would it be enough against alien technology that was thousands of years more advanced? How long to reload? He asked. Engineer Yoon checked his systems. 30 minutes to recharge the capacitors and cool the barrel. We can only fire once every half hour at maximum power. Dr. Kim was already analyzing the test results. Captain, I'm seeing something interesting in the energy readings. The projectile maintained its structure throughout the acceleration. It didn't break apart under the stress. What does that mean? Asked Do-Hyun. It means our tungsten carbide composite is strong enough to survive the launch. When it hits an alien ship, it will punch right through instead of fragmenting on impact. Over the next few days, they conducted more tests with different targets and distances. Each shot confirmed their hopes. The railgun could deliver devastating kinetic energy with pinpoint accuracy. But time was running out. Admiral Park's voice came through the secure communication channel from Earth. Captain, our intelligence sources indicate the Vorthak are growing impatient. They're sending messages to the Galactic Concord requesting permission to begin pacification protocols. Captain Do-Hyun felt his stomach tighten. How long do we have? Days, maybe a week at most. We need to act soon. Dr. Kim had been monitoring alien communications for weeks, learning about their military procedures and fleet movements. Admiral, I've discovered something important about how the Concord operates. When they pacify a species, they always send a small diplomatic fleet first to accept formal surrender. Go on, said Admiral Park. The diplomatic fleet isn't heavily armed. They expect surrendering species to be helpless. It's a ceremony more than a military operation. Captain Doyon understood immediately. You're suggesting we use their own protocols against them. Exactly, replied Dr. Kim. We transmit a surrender message, request a formal ceremony at the edge of our solar system. When they arrive expecting defenseless humans, we hit them with the railgun. Engineer Yoon looked worried. But what about their shields? We've only tested against asteroids. Dr. Kim pulled up her analysis of alien technology. Their shields are designed to deflect energy, plasma, lasers, particle beams. But look at these readings from their ships. The shield generators create a field that bends electromagnetic radiation around the ship. A solid projectile moving at 15% of light speed should pass right through. Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. It's a tremendous risk. If we're wrong, if their shields can stop kinetic weapons, we'll have revealed our secret for nothing. Admiral, said Captain Doyon, we're going to face their fleets eventually. Better to fight on our terms than wait for them to bring overwhelming force. The decision was made. Admiral Park transmitted humanity's formal surrender to the Vorthak, requesting a diplomatic ceremony to finalize the agreement. The message expressed humanity's understanding that resistance was futile and their willingness to accept conquered protection. Commander Vex responded within hours, clearly pleased that the humans had finally seen reason. A diplomatic fleet would arrive in 1 week to accept Earth's formal submission and begin installing monitoring technology. The week passed in frantic preparation. Captain Doyon drilled his crew repeatedly on the attack sequence. They would have one chance, maybe two if they were very lucky. After that, the aliens would know about the railgun and adapt their tactics accordingly. Dr. Kim refined her targeting calculations, accounting for the movement of both ships and the travel time of the projectile. At 50,000 kilometers, the standard distance for diplomatic ceremonies, the tungsten round would take 1.06 seconds to reach its target. Engineer Yoon made final adjustments to the railgun's power systems and shock absorption. The weapon had to work perfectly the first time. There would be no second chances if something went wrong. As the diplomatic fleet approached the solar system, Captain Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the Defiance, hidden among the asteroids of the outer belt. Soon humanity would find out if their desperate gamble could save them from alien domination. The railgun was ready. The trap was set. All that remained was to see if humans could outfight a galactic empire with nothing but physics and determination. Back on Earth, Admiral Park Ji-soo sat in the emergency meeting room, deep beneath Earth Defense Command headquarters. The message from Captain Do-hyun had arrived 3 hours ago, and the world's leaders were still trying to understand what it meant. They want to limit our technology? Asked the Secretary General of the United Nations. What gives them the right? Admiral Park looked tired. She had been in meetings since the message arrived, trying to coordinate humanity's response. According to Captain Do-hyun's report, they claim it's for galactic peace. The Galactic Concord has been doing this for 3,000 years. Dr. Kim Nari's voice came through the communication system from the stranded Horizon. Admiral, I've been analyzing the data we collected from their ships. Their technology is incredible, but there's something strange about it. What do you mean? Asked Admiral Park. All of their weapons and defenses are energy-based. Plasma cannons, particle beams, antimatter reactors. They've perfected energy manipulation to an amazing degree, but their understanding of kinetic weapons seems very limited. The room fell silent. Admiral Park leaned forward. Explain that more clearly, Doctor. When they scanned our ship, they focused entirely on our fusion reactor and energy systems. They completely ignored our physical weapon systems. It's like they don't even consider solid projectiles to be real weapons. Engineer Yoon Min-ho, also speaking from the Horizon, added his thoughts. I've been studying their energy pulse attack. It's designed specifically to disrupt fusion reactions, but it wouldn't affect anything mechanical or kinetic. Admiral Park felt a spark of hope. Are you saying they have a weakness? Maybe, said Dr. Kim carefully. From what I can tell, their shields are designed to deflect energy attacks. Plasma, lasers, particle beams. But I'm not sure they could stop a solid object moving fast enough. The Secretary General looked confused. You mean like bullets? Not exactly, replied Dr. Kim. Bullets are too slow and too small. But if we could accelerate a larger projectile to a significant fraction of light speed, the kinetic energy would be enormous. Admiral Park's mind raced. She had studied military history extensively. and knew that armies often became too focused on one type of warfare. "Doctor, are you suggesting we could build a weapon they can't defend against?" "It's possible," said Dr. Kim, "but it would require technology we don't currently have. We would need to accelerate projectiles to speeds no human weapon has ever achieved." Engineer Yoon spoke up again. "A railgun. That's what we would need, but it would have to be massive, and it would require incredible amounts of power." Admiral Park stood up and walked to the large screen showing Earth's orbital defenses. "How long would it take to build such a weapon?" "Months, maybe a year," said Yoon, "and we would need to test it in complete secrecy. If the aliens discover what we're doing, they might attack immediately." The Secretary General looked worried. "This seems very dangerous. These aliens have superior technology. Maybe we should consider their offer of protection." "Protection?" Admiral Park turned around sharply. "They're talking about making us prisoners in our own solar system. They want to control our technology, our development, our future. That's not protection, that's slavery." Dr. Kim's voice came through the speakers again. "Admiral, I've been thinking about something else. If the Galactic Concord has been doing this for 3,000 years, how many other species have they suppressed? How many civilizations have been forced to give up their freedom?" Admiral Park nodded slowly. "And if we can find a way to resist them, maybe we can inspire others to do the same." The meeting continued for several more hours. They discussed the technical challenges of building a railgun, powerful enough to threaten alien ships. They talked about the political problems of keeping such a project secret. Most importantly, they debated whether humanity had the right to risk everything on such a dangerous plan. Finally, Admiral Park made her decision. "We're going to try. Dr. Kim, I want you and Engineer Yoon to start working on railgun designs immediately. We'll tell the aliens we need more time to consider their offer." "How much time do you think they'll give us?" asked the Secretary General. "Not much," replied Admiral Park, "but maybe enough." Over the next few days, the best scientists and engineers on Earth began working on the most ambitious project in human history. The railgun would need to be built in secret, disguised as other construction projects. It would require new materials, new power systems, and new targeting computers. Dr. Kim worked 18-hour days, running calculations and simulations. The weapon they were designing would accelerate a tungsten projectile to 15% of light speed. The kinetic energy would be equivalent to a nuclear explosion, but concentrated in a solid mass that could punch through any known defense. Engineer Yoon faced equally difficult challenges. The railgun would need to be 2 kilometers long to achieve the necessary acceleration. The magnetic field required would be stronger than anything humanity had ever created. The power drain would be enormous. They would need multiple fusion reactors just to fire a single shot. Meanwhile, Captain Do-hyun continued to stall the aliens. He sent careful messages explaining that Earth's government needed time to consider such an important decision. Commander Vex grew impatient, but the Vorthak seemed willing to wait a little longer for humanity's surrender. As the weeks passed, Dr. Kim made a disturbing discovery. While analyzing more alien communication intercepts, she learned about other species that had refused the Concord's protection. Their homeworlds had been destroyed, their populations scattered or extinct. "Admiral," she reported during a secure communication, "the Concord doesn't just limit emerging species. If they refuse to submit, the Concord destroys them completely. They call it pacification." Admiral Park felt cold fear in her stomach. "How long do we have?" "Based on their previous actions, probably 6 weeks. If we don't surrender by then, they'll send a larger fleet to eliminate us." The pressure mounted as Earth's secret weapon took shape. Construction crews worked around the clock, not knowing exactly what they were building but understanding it was humanity's only hope. The railgun slowly grew in the converted hull of Earth's newest warship, the UES Defiance. With time running out, Admiral Park faced the hardest decision of her life. They could surrender and accept alien control, or they could gamble everything on an untested weapon. If the railgun failed, humanity would face extinction, but if it worked, everything would change. Captain Lee Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His ship was humanity's pride, the first vessel capable of traveling faster than light. After 3 months of testing, they were finally ready for their first real mission beyond the solar system. Captain, we're approaching the Centauri system, reported his navigator. Do-yoon nodded and walked to his command chair. This was history in the making. Humanity was about to explore their first alien star system. Dr. Kim Nari looked up from her science station. She was the ship's chief science officer, a brilliant woman who had spent years studying theoretical physics. All sensors are working perfectly, Captain. We should be able to detect any signs of life or technology. The horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Centauri system. Immediately, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Do-hyun's heart raced as his crew scrambled to their stations. Captain, we have multiple contacts, shouted the sensor operator. 12 large ships, unknown design. They're moving toward us fast. Do-hyun gripped his chair. They had prepared for this possibility, but it was still shocking. They were not alone in the universe. Open communication channels. Send our peaceful greeting message. Before they could transmit anything, a voice filled the bridge. It spoke perfect English, though with a strange accent. Human vessel, you will stop all movement and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in destruction. The view screen activated, showing an alien face. The creature had gray skin, large black eyes, and no visible nose. Its mouth moved as it spoke, revealing sharp teeth. I am Commander Vex of the Vorthak Hegemony. You have entered restricted space without permission. Do-hyun stood up, trying to look confident despite his fear. I am Captain Lee Do-hyun of the United Earthship Horizon. We come in peace, seeking contact with other intelligent species. The alien commander made a sound that might have been laughter. Peace? You primitive creatures do not understand your place. The Galactic Concord has rules about species like yours. You will submit to technological limitation protocols immediately. What does that mean? Asked Do-hyun. It means your species will be restricted to your home system. Your weapons will be removed. Your technology will be monitored. You will become a protected developing species under our guidance. Dr. Kim Nari stepped forward. Protected from what? We pose no threat to anyone. Commander Vex's eyes narrowed. All emerging species pose a potential threat. The Concord has maintained peace for 3,000 years by preventing primitive species from developing dangerous technologies. You will comply. Do-hyun felt anger rising in his chest. We are not primitive. We are explorers, scientists. We have rights. Rights? The alien commander seemed amused. You have fusion reactors and chemical rockets. Your most advanced weapons are nuclear explosives. You are children playing with toys. The Concord has technology you cannot even imagine. To prove his point, Commander Vex nodded to someone off-screen. Suddenly, the Horizon's engines went dead. The lights flickered and dimmed. Emergency power kicked in, but their main fusion reactor was completely offline. How did you do that? Dr. Kim asked, checking her instruments frantically. A simple energy pulse, replied Vex. We can disable any of your systems from this distance. Your fusion technology is laughably primitive. Now prepare for boarding. We will install monitoring devices and restriction codes in your computers. Do-hyun looked around his bridge. His crew was scared but trying to stay professional. They had come out here hoping to make friends with alien civilizations. Instead, they had found masters who saw them as inferior beings. Captain, whispered his communications officer, I'm getting messages from Earth. Admiral Park wants to know our status. Do-hyun knew he had to make a choice. He could surrender and accept these aliens' demands, or he could resist and probably get his ship destroyed. But something about this felt wrong. These aliens talked about peace, but they were acting like bullies. Commander Vex, he said finally, we need time to consider your demands. This is a decision that affects our entire species. We cannot make it alone. The alien leaned forward. You have one of your hours to decide. Accept our protection or face the consequences of defying the conquered. Many species have made the wrong choice. Their worlds are now empty monuments to their foolishness. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Do-hyun turned to Dr. Kim. Can you get our engines back online? She shook her head. Whatever they did, it's completely shut down our reactor. We're running on backup power only. We can't move and we can't fight. Engineer Yoon Minho spoke up from his station. Captain, I've been analyzing their energy pulse. It's incredibly sophisticated, but it only affects our fusion system. They seem to know exactly how our technology works. How is that possible? Asked Do-hyun. They've been watching us, said Dr. Kim quietly. Probably for years, maybe decades. They know everything about our technology, our capabilities, our weaknesses. Do-yun walked to the viewing window and stared out at the alien ships. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, sleek and graceful, clearly built by a civilization far more advanced than humanity. But their beauty could not hide the threat they represented. "Open a channel to Earth," he ordered. "We need to report this to Admiral Park immediately. Humanity needs to know what we're facing out here." As his communications officer worked to establish contact with Earth, Do-hyun thought about the choice before them. These aliens offered protection, but at the cost of freedom. They wanted to keep humanity locked in their home system, forever dependent on alien oversight. He thought about the explorers and scientists back on Earth, people who had spent their lives dreaming of reaching the stars. How could he tell them that their dreams were not welcome in this galaxy? How could he accept that humanity would never be allowed to grow beyond what these aliens thought was safe? The Vorthak ships maintained their position, waiting for humanity's answer. On the bridge of the horizon, Captain Lee Do-yun prepared to send a message that would change everything. He did not know it yet, but his next words would set in motion events that would shake the entire galaxy. The hour was almost up, and humanity had to choose between slavery and defiance.